Hey guys, Eddie, back with Couch Talk. Welcome back to the show. If it's your first time with me, welcome to the show. Guys, before we begin, please hit like, please hit subscribe, turn those notifications on, and get strapped in. I promise I will earn your viewership. We got a whopper today. As some of you know, Stanford, after 18 months of grueling work, has finally done us all an enormous favor and compiled a giant list of words that they believe we should eliminate from the United States dictionary, from the English dictionary. Words that they feel do more harm than good, words that they feel are either overtly or sometimes accidentally threatening or offensive in some form or another. And some of the words, of course, are obvious. Words like the N word, words that I would never dream of saying in a million years in the first place. Not that I think that, freedom of speech is freedom of speech, but I wouldn't dream of saying stuff like that. But there's some words in here that, and some phrases that are literally blowing my mind, like just are out there. A good example is the word American. They believe that American is not a word we should say. Instead, we should say the words U.S. citizen. And the reason that they gave was because to say American assumes that the United States of America is the most important nation in the Americas. And first of all, it is. And second of all, I don't feel like it implies that, actually. Every time I've said American, I have been referring to the only nation that actually has the word America in the name. I mean, yeah, there's a continent of South America, and there's a Central American connection there where, there are many nations in those continents, but America, United States of America, is the only thing that really can even lay claim to America, in my opinion. I am certainly not using it in derogatory fashion. Matter of fact, it's one of the biggest compliments I can offer someone. So that's one of them that just blew my mind. Gangbusters. We're not allowed to say the word gangbusters because it conjures, images of cops arresting gangs. And I'm sitting here scratching my head as to why that is not a completely normal thing. If of course the gang is involved in illicit or illegal activity. Obviously, if the gang is just a gang of people who wander around and take up charity and distribute it, great. But I don't think any gang is even thinking about this word affecting them. So I'm not sure where, some of this stuff comes from. Word immigrant. We're not supposed to say the word immigrant. We should instead say person who immigrated or non-citizen. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, that's the exact same thing. What difference does it make? I mean, we're all, culturally, we're all immigrants. If you go back and far enough in our history. So I'm not sure what not sure what the problem is. Some of those words like immigrant, addicted is another one. Addicted, we're not supposed to say addicted because we're instead supposed to say the words hooked or devoted. Come on, guys. Hunter Biden was really devoted to cocaine. I mean, some of these, when we change these words out, it's like changing the whole meaning. It doesn't even make any sense, right? Like, Here's an example of that. We're not supposed to say the words blind study anymore, or double blind, or anything like that. We're supposed to instead say masked study. Masked study doesn't mean the same thing as blind study. And there's a reason that we don't want anybody to be able to see. Like, literally, it's blind for a reason. I don't think that those words are inherently ableist. Yes, I realize that there are blind people in the world. No, I do not think that they should be taking offense to that. See, here's the problem, right? And I've said it, if I've said it once, I've said it a million times. There's a moral imperative to try not to offend people, right? We should always go around trying to be respectful preemptively, even if we don't think the person has earned our respect. I believe that every human being automatically is owed dignity and respect just because they're human. That's it. No other reason. Doesn't matter what kind of human they are. Doesn't matter if they're handicapped in any way. It doesn't matter if they're any race or creed or religion, anything. They are owed that respect. Doesn't matter if you've known them for a million years or not. They're owed that respect. So we should try to offer that respect every single time we talk to anybody. But there's also a moral imperative to try not to be offended. Like, it really shouldn't be easy to offend anyone. And if you do get offended, we should turn the other cheek. Of course, we've completely lost that lesson. But stop letting yourself get mad over stupid stuff. Right? Stop letting yourself get triggered. Speaking of triggered, we're not even supposed to say the words trigger warning anymore. Apparently, we're supposed to say the words content note. I don't even know what that means. I've never heard those words before. Content note? That's the problem. They're changing some of the definitions. They're changing, like, masked study just doesn't even mean the same thing as blind study. Some of these are just restatements of the exact same thing. For example, okay, we're not supposed to say committed suicide. We're instead supposed to say died by suicide. What? We're not supposed to, we're not supposed to say preferred pronouns anymore. We're just supposed to say pronouns. And I'm like, get why? Because preferred suggests that one has the ability to choose one's gender. And I'm sitting here like, isn't that exactly what the trans movement wants to do? They're not choosing their biology. Well, they are sort of to an extent, but they're also choosing their gender, how they express themselves. And honestly, I don't even think that's what it means. I think it means that their preference is as to how they're addressed and how they negotiate that gender. I think their gender, to them inside, probably it is what it is. But I think that the negotiation of your identity within a community, within a framework, is something that you would have a preference of, right? For example, I prefer for people to think of me as kind of an open-minded, understanding, logical centrist that's slightly fiscally conservative, right? But I don't often get that, right? That is an identity that I hope to negotiate with everyone, that I may be successful, I may not be successful. Same thing goes here. I may be one of those things, right? I may be a logical person, but me negotiating that with my surrounding sociology, that's a different ballgame. So I would have a preference, right? It may not be what I actually get, but some of these are just dumb. They're just grandfather. We can't say the word grandfather anymore, like to grandfather something in, because it's there's an illusion. They feel that there's an illusion to grandfather laws, which are laws that, when the original ones that were grandfathered were to try to keep African Americans from voting, to try to keep that Jim Crow. But, some of this stuff is just dumb. But, they don't want us to use the words beating a dead horse because it normalizes animal cruelty. And guys, it's a hypothetical horse and it's dead already. I mean, that. Here's the thing. Nobody's mind goes there, right? Like, nobody that I have ever heard of in my life, and I must have either heard that phrase uttered or uttered it myself several thousand times, maybe even in the tens of thousands. And not a one has then told me, that really makes me think about beating my animals. Nobody thinks like that. Why do they infer? This is, again, right? We're receiving the worst possible option, right? We're trying to internalize the worst possible inference that we can take. And don't get me wrong, I understand the need to be cautious with your speech. I understand the diction is important. Don't come away from this thinking that I'm telling you that you should not speak respectfully. You should. Don't come away from this thinking that, you should, not pay attention to what you're going to say or think about it before you say it. Both of those things are true. But guys, the biggest thing is that we have got to stop taking offense to. It's really not that big of a deal. It's really not. Okay, we're not allowed to say the word master, as in master bedroom. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I understand, you wouldn't want. I could perfectly understand contexts of that word being bad, right? Like, I would not want to walk up to somebody and say, okay, I'm your master now. That's obvious, right? Because I don't have any slaves, nor will I ever even tolerate anybody who does. But to not be able to say, like, master bedroom, instead we're supposed to say primary. I mean, guys, come on. We have taken it. You know what? This got me thinking. I recently started rereading 1984 by George Orwell, and it's a phenomenal book. And I'm going back and rereading a lot of the books that I read in high school and college, simply because at the time, I had to read it. It was an assignment, and then it was like, have these 4 chapters done by tomorrow because there'll be a quiz. Then it wasn't as fun. It was not as enjoyable. But now that I get to go back and read it of my own volition, oh man, some of these are incredible. But you know what? In George Orwell's 1984, this is exactly what, as a matter of fact, there's a whole chapter dedicated to what they call newspeak, which is basically a whole new language that they've developed, which is designed to limit the thought and autonomy of those under the influence of that language, those who use it. And the chapter that I think it's like the 4th or 5th chapter anyway, it's like there's a guy who's discussing, it's his job to do that, his job to manage the new dictionary. And basically that's exactly what he does, is eliminate words, just categorically start taking words out of the dictionary to constrict expression. And that is exactly what words are. They are our expression, but not only our expression, but our negotiation with the world around us, our means of understanding, our means of, not only that, it's kind of like a means of prayer, of introspection. Words are just so powerful. And to start removing them is the last thing that one should ever think of doing. It's not even that they are potentially harmful or not potentially harmful. It's that even the harmful ones are necessary for the very reason that they're harmful. So a lot of these, it's funny because it's like, okay, one of these words, for example, is like Karen. We're no longer supposed to say the word Karen to refer to somebody who's kind of like annoying or whatever. Instead we're supposed to say the words entitled white woman. And first of all, that's worse. Right? Like, I don't know anybody who I would call a Karen who, if I called them an entitled white woman would feel better about it. Some of this just doesn't make any. But there's an even more fundamental problem with that, and that is, if I'm calling somebody a Karen, my intent is to offend. And if I'm not saying it directly to them, at least I'm attempting to offend them in somebody else's. Either way, the point is to be mean. And don't get me wrong, while I do not condone meanness or cruelty, especially, even with speech, it's still something that needs expression, because if you figure out a way to bottle up all of that negative expression, then guess what's left? You're left with a bunch of introverts that literally explode when they finally do express themselves. And then it's physical, and then it's violence. That's the last thing we want. We need a way to be able to get this stuff off our chest, to be able to vent. Things like stupid, crazy, insane, those words, yeah, okay. I understand that they are ableist in nature, but the whole point of those words is that we are trying to offend. It doesn't make any sense to remove offensive words on the context that they're offensive, because that's the whole point. Some of this stuff just blows my mind. But guys, let me know what you think. Am I just going nuts here? Am I being crazy? I think this is like, this is 1984. This is removing words from the dictionary. This is book banning. This is revisionist. This is ridiculous. I mean, let me know what you think. We'll talk about it. I'll catch you guys next time on Couch Talk.